welcome to the fourth and final review of the evening. Up this time is Dear Esther, Landmark Edition. Out of all the games I think we've covered this week, this is probably the one you've heard of. Because Dear Esther, well, how do I put this? Like, it's kind of there in the title of this version. This was considered to be a landmark in, I guess, adventure or narrative gaming and indie gaming, because this is, they call it, at the very least, the first walking simulator. Though keep in mind that was used derisively back in the day. I'm not sure how much animosity that is contained here in 2022. But yeah, back in 2012, when the second version of Dear Esther was released, it is worth noting that the version we are reviewing here is the third version, because this was originally a Half-Life 2 mod that was eventually redeveloped into a fleshed-out commercial product in 2012, and the Landmark Edition here is the game remade once again, this time in the Unity engine. Anyway, so with that in mind, yeah, this is the game that is at least one of them, I think, alongside the Stanley Parable and Gone Home, to usher forth a completely quote-unquote gameless experience. That is to say, there's no puzzles to solve, there's no people to shoot, there's no what we would have once recognized as traditional gameplay elements in the game. And there's no a real fail state. You can indeed, quote unquote, drown or fall off cliffs. That'll just reset you back, or you just tumble down to the ground below, depending on how far away that is. Point is, and why it's called a walking simulator has to do with the pacing of the game, because this is not a game where you move fast. You're not jogging at top speed to get to your destination. You're walking very slowly, deliberately, and that's, in this case, thematically relevant. Because if you are unfamiliar with Dear Esther, this is about a troubled man reading a series of letters to his deceased wife, who is, of course, named Esther. Though, as it turns out, this is actually a line from a Faith No More song. I'm like, that is that's the big thing that comes with this version of the game. It's got a new director's commentary, so they spill a lot of the behind the scenes, and it's also they added a lot of clarity to what's going on. So definitely not a thing you want to listen to on your first venture. Though another thing to keep in mind is this has some randomization elements. Like, there are bits of story, let's say, that come in or come out. Some of them more explicit than others. They were explaining one piece of let's say story that was a fairly explicit picture of something could or could not be found, but it's like there are other signs and portents around the island of what's going on. I won't spoilers there. The thing that the director's commentary left still ambiguous, as at least mostly, is this a dream or is this actually happening? I will say I think that Dear Esther is taking place in a dream-like atmosphere. It may be happening, though it's like it could be the last moments of a dying man's vision or something like that, because it's definitely not a thing that's taking place in real reality. Because you know, once again, the director's commentary pointed out there's a lot of fucking lit candles around, and it's like, okay, who lit all these candles? You know, who put them here? And so on and so forth. You know, that's the biggest indicator that this isn't taking place in reality. And there's other environmental storytelling bits, like a lot of paint on, big mountain walls, which, that is a thing that you can do with enough time and, let's say, patience. And Dear Esther is a very short experience, probably clocking in about 2 to 3 hours to get through all the chapters. Though that's kind of what the randomization, I think, is there. So you will, it's also so, if you go through the story, and if, like, my contemporaries here had the game and they went through the story and we compared notes, there's a good chance that I would have gotten something that they didn't. Like, it's that, that unique brand of that particular play session. Like, and yeah, gotta admit, this is a kind of a hard thing to review, because, it doesn't have traditional gameplay elements or fail states or that kind of thing. But we are no strangers to, excuse me, we are no strangers to this kind of game either. In several, let's say, forks. But it's also, this isn't like a new, fresh narrative adventure, like, say, Meet the Truffle Pigs or whatever it was we covered last year. This is one of the critical building blocks of the genre. And the question is more, maybe, does it hold up? Well, that's a bit of a loaded question in and of itself, because this isn't the original version of that. This isn't even the version that came out in 2012. They brought this game to a new engine, that was more in line with what modern systems, namely the Xbox One and, like, PlayStation 4, could handle. It's not a question of, like, do those systems have the power to handle those games? By the time, by 2017, who exactly was working with, like, Source 1.0? Yeah. So they rebuilt this in Unity. Not only did they give it a new developer's commentary, they re-recorded the music and remade the graphics. So this is probably the best that this game has ever looked. Now, granted, in terms of, like, visual fidelity, it's not all that impressive, if I'm being honest. That being said, it's really more down to the art direction, which is fairly top-notch, especially, like, the cave segment. That was very impressive. And the audio was pretty on point. Sometimes there is music to highlight certain emotional events, but outside of that, it's more diegetic sound design. Like you're on an island in the Hebrides of Scotland, so it's going to sound very windy, very cold, and it gets that point across rather well as well. Like that being said, it's an essential part of the genre, and it holds up well today. But I suppose the question is it worth $10? That's a bit trickier to answer, because I suppose the downside of not only this being a walking simulator, this is certainly something that's come up. Bates, like I'd say the randomization element is the thing that is really giving it that mild recommendation, because otherwise it's like, you could probably watch this over YouTube and get mainly the same experience. Not exactly the same experience, because once again, you would not be moving the character. You would be, you're moving to the rhythm of someone else instead of yourself. And that does make a difference. Like, but yeah. And it's also a fairly dramatic and dark game. Like, so worth noting on that. Like, this isn't a game that ends well. I'll say that. So, yeah, I'd say mild recommendation to purchase in this day and age. Though, like I said, if you're into this kind of game, you probably already have it. Though maybe not necessarily the Landmark Edition. Though I think this has become the default version of the game, since I could not see the original Dear Esther listed anywhere. Right. So, any questions, comments, or concern about Dear Esther here?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I've never played it, but I've always heard that it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I preferred the Stanley Parable. But that's more subjective. I did like it more than Gone Home. Anyway, so that'll about do it for this installment of the Fragments of Silicon Reviews. The week ahead. So let me see. Coming up on March 23rd, this Wednesday, we'll be having Eduardo Bonfanadini of Bonfa Games. Currently, he is developing a game called Dangerous Streets. It's a retro love letter to 16-bit brawlers. I know we've featured such things on the show before, but I think this is the first time we're going to be interviewing someone about that since Streets of Rage 4, if I'm being honest. And he has confirmed, apparently, like he was going... it was a bit touch and go there because he was dealing with some stuff, but apparently that has passed. So we are go for this. It's Streets of Chaos. Dangerous Streets is a different game. Anyway, no Friday show this week, but we do have plans for a new installment of Moonhawk Studios Presents after this week's episode of Fragments of Silicon. So be sure to join us for all of that. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.